Peace. Peace. What's up, Charles?
What's up, brother? What's up, brother,
All
brother?
good, man. All good. Hump day, bro. Hump day Wednesday.
Yeah. So,
Thank goodness.
well, today, if we get the chance, please share today. Hey, today is Wednesday, the beautiful 17th of February. It's about 6:56. We want to welcome you all here to Facebook Live with Mel and Charlie. Again, we want to thank our representatives last night for joining us, airing some views pertaining to House Bill 1286. And, you know, like we ended last night, get the stakeholders in here. Uh, there's so many things going on in the state right now. Yes, share. I don't know where I put my share board, but I echo the sentiments of sharing. Just press the share button. But we don't know what's going to happen, and it's just mind-boggling to think that when everything started up, right? When everything started up, our numbers are high. We got vaccinated. And I know this entire state is not vaccinated. But for some reason, the numbers automatically just went down low, as if the virus would run away because it heard the vaccine was in town. You know, I mean, it's just coincidental that maybe you don't have to get vaccinated to have the virus go away, because for some reason it's going away, and we have a small percentage of us who are vaccinated. So maybe if we just put a little vaccine in a bottle and just put it at every street corner, the vaccine will see that and it will say, ah, and run away, and it won't affect anybody. What do you think, Mel?
It's very coincidental
Mm-hmm.
that when everybody's talking about opening up, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think what I heard, and again unverified, so I really didn't want to say it last night, because it's true. I did hear that the number of tests have been reduced. So obviously, if you're not testing as many people as you were, then obviously the number of cases are going to be down. So I don't know. The numbers too. I mean, they report today. Our numbers were from Monday, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's a 2 day lag. One day last, or 2 weeks ago, there was a 4 day lag. So, we just got to wait and see and roll with the punches. But tonight we have Minnie Ko. Her doorbell just rang, so she's in the waiting room. But
Mm-hmm.
many of you remember Minnie from early on. She's been on our show a couple of times, and she shared with us a lot of information about COVID and how South Korea dealt with it, and how they were able to keep the numbers really down without shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
But it required some very strict restrictions. So anyway, we invited her back to give us an update, and looking forward to it. So again, guys, before I bring her in, share,
Okay.
share.
Yes, share.
But yes, Charles, that is a very interesting phenomenon that happens whenever we get into that discussion. All of a sudden, whoops.
Phenomenon or phenomenon, one of the two. But it's there. It's there, right? Aloha.
Hi, how are you?
Doing
Hi,
fine. Good to see you
Nicole. How are
again.
you?
Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Same to you,
Same
and
to you.
welcome back. Welcome back. How's the weather in South Korea right now?
Uh, it's okay. It
Sun.
was really cold for a while, but now it's starting to warm up a little, but we have cold spells here and there.
Well, someone told me that you folks have a specific science procedure where when you folks have cold spells, you folks send it over to the state of Texas. That's what I heard.
And Oregon. And
and give
Oregon.
them and give them power outages.
Yeah, interesting. My kids in Oregon are just having a rough time. They actually shut down because of the ice. There was just too much
Mm,
ice. It was too dangerous to
mhm,
drive. So it warmed up and it's slushing now,
mhm,
and it
mhm.
should be back to normal in a day or
You know,
two.
it was interesting because it was a really cold winter here and there was a lot of snow. They've never seen this much snow within the city in the past like 20 years. And so it was a cold and snowy winter.
I had my share of cold Korean weather back in the 80s and the 90s, and it's bitter cold. It is painfully cold. It is, but it's beautiful though in the winter. It's beautiful when you look at I mean, the trees no more leaves, but the mountains get the snow. It's really nice. It's
Yeah,
nice,
no,
but it's cold.
it was a lot of snow within the city and the kids were able to go out and actually build huge snowmans and it was the first time in a long time that they had this much snow within the cities.
Wow. I don't know if you can see the comments, but a lot of people are saying hi, welcome, nice to see you back. You've become very popular here on our show, and we're very happy to see you back.
Thank
So,
you for having me.
no, I mean, I know you're a busy person, so and I guess we can start with giving us an overview of what's happening in South Korea. We haven't heard much about COVID in South Korea, but how's COVID treating South Korea right now?
You know, I think from the last time we spoke, it was doing really well here. The numbers were really low, and it seemed as though they had gotten a firm grasp on the virus. There wasn't a lot of community spread, and when there were cases, they were able to follow up on those cases and shut it down real quick. But since November, it's been really tough here. We saw the cases start to jump in November, and then by December, they were hitting about 1,000, at some times over 1,000 cases per day. And you know they really started to crack down on the social distancing regulations and trying to make sure that people were getting back into the mode of wearing their mask, keeping their distance, not gathering in large groups. And so they were able to do that throughout December. But it seems as though each time there is a huge or major holiday where people start to gather, there seems to be a lot of outbreak. And right now, what they're worried about is so that was, that's what they considered the third wave here in Korea. But right after things had started to get a little bit better, which was towards Lunar New Year's here in Korea, it just within, I would say 2 days, the past 2 days, the numbers started to jump up again. And so they do think that it was because of the lunar holidays and people gathering and people traveling. And so we're seeing numbers for the past 2 days, it was over 600 positive cases. But that it also includes people arriving, international arrivals here as well. But hopefully they'll be able to get a hold on that soon. The interesting thing though was that for the first wave and the second wave here in Korea, there was an actual epicenter. So you knew exactly what the problem was and where the problem area was, and they were able to maintain that. But for the third wave and what we're seeing now is that really there is no epicenter. And so before, for the first wave, it was in Daegu and it was affiliated with a religious institution. And then the second wave was, I believe it was a protest that was held in Seoul. And then the third wave, and what we're seeing here, what they're thinking could be the fourth wave, is there is really no epicenter for the virus right now. And so what they're seeing is a lot of spread throughout the country. You see cases, high number of cases in major cities throughout the country. What's also worrisome is that about 30% of the cases that are positive, um, they don't have any symptoms. So these people carry no symptoms at all, but they're able to spread the virus. And then another major concern was around 20, somewhere between 23 to 25% of the people, they're not able to track back to a source. And so before it was, they were able to, if you had COVID, they could basically track it back and identify where you had uh, gotten infected or who you had gotten infected from. But now, about 20, over 20% of the cases, they're not able to track back to a source. And so that's when they start to see a lot of community spread, which is worrisome.
Do you think it's the inability to track? Do you feel it may be that South Korea is now using the contact tracers from Oahu? Is that the reason why you can't track some? I mean, just asking.
Yeah, he hasn't changed, Vinny. He has not changed at all.
you know, it's just, it, they're not, there's spread within, there's community spread, and you're not, and because there's a lot of it, they're not able to track it back because you're there, and there's a lot of people that are out there that have COVID that have no symptoms at all, and so they're not getting tested, and yet they're spreading the virus, so it's hard to pinpoint where it's coming from.
Let me ask you a question with regards to the upsurge that you're having now. Are they doing any type of sequencing to determine if you have variants, if this is part of the new variants that's actually making its presence known? And the other thing is, I'm kind of curious that when you talk about the spread, it's and I'm going to try to relate this to Hawaii, because when you talked about it, and when we were discussing it back then, South Korea had a really magnificent program that just suffocated it. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And Hawaii, we were just like waiting for. I mean, we got hit one big one when we were like in a 200 and 300s. Then all of a sudden, it dies. And yet, you're saying that there's times when they have like super spreader events, a lot of people coming in contact. So it's quite evident that, okay, you got the lunar celebration, you got to spread. Here we have a lot of big events, but we don't hear anything about spreading. And so I'm just wondering, your numbers that you're getting, especially from the asymptomatics, are these done through just surveillance testing, or people actually presented problems for them to go and get tested? How did you folks come across it?
So after the third wave, which was from November through December, the government started to crack down on what people were doing and how many people were allowed to gather. And at every entrance to most of the buildings here in Korea, you have a checkpoint where their temperature is checked. You need to sanitize your hands before you go in. But, like I had mentioned about, since there are over 30%, are they're asymptomatic, they have no symptoms, they go right through those screens because, they don't have a fever, they're not coughing, yet they have the ability to spread the virus. And so, it's been spreading that way. It every time there is a jump in the virus and you see higher numbers, they have a tiered system where, they start to crack down on what people can do, and the regulations are they become more strict. And when they do that, over a period of maybe 2 to 3 weeks, you see the numbers start to decline again. But I think Hawaii is a little bit different in the sense where here the government encourages everyone, regardless of your symptoms now. If you feel as though you need to go and be checked, you can go and have a COVID test free of charge. And they are encouraging people that have symptoms, people that don't have symptoms, people that think they may have come into contact with someone. There a lot of people are being tested, and I want to say close to 100,000 people a day are being tested.
Wow.
And it's the amount of tests that are being done here versus back at home. There's not a lot of, I feel like, one, transparency is an issue. They're not being transparent with people. And two, you need to encourage the people to socially distance and stay at home and, to go and get tested. So I feel as though the numbers in Hawaii are not true numbers. They're not the actual numbers. And, I feel as though it could be a lot more, especially now that you see an increase of people that are asymptomatic.
Right. So the only thing, real last question, Mel. The only thing that I kind of worry is because, like on Kauai, things have been closed for a while. Well, it hasn't been closed. It's just that I believe travelers are just heeding the warning of the CDC, and that is don't travel. So the only thing that I'm afraid of is that once we get open, for trans-Pacific travel or international travel, then I'm afraid people just will not be honest if they are sick. You know what I'm saying? If they get a little cold, and normally they would go maybe to their doctor to get something to fight it off. If they think possibly it's COVID, they just might not participate because they know that, hey, if we start going back in and the numbers rise, guess what? We're going to be locking everything's up again, and nobody wants that to happen. And that might be a fear. Well, I'm just speaking of myself. That's a fear that I have, that it'll be done for all the wrong reasons. Yeah.
What's interesting is when they opened up the testing travel program here with Korea, and now what people from Korea can do is, if you have a negative PCR test within 72 hours, you're able to travel to Hawaii without quarantining for 14 days. And, that raised a lot of concern for me, especially, being here in Korea. They're very transparent with the data, and you see a lot of the numbers that come up. Here in Korea, beginning January, what had happened was they require all people coming into Korea to have that 72-hour test. But once you arrive, you need to quarantine for 14 days anyways. So you need to come in with a negative test, and then you need to quarantine for 14 days. And, they're not going to get rid of that anytime soon, because what they're seeing is, on a daily basis, the people that come in during their quarantine, the 14 days, they are developing symptoms and they're testing positive, or before the 14 days are up, they're retested and they show that, now they're positive. And so even though you come in with a negative test result, you still have, here in Korea, there are still 30-40 people that are arriving into Korea that test positive within the 14 days. So it doesn't, I don't think, it was a concern for me and for my parents. They were visiting me here in Korea, and, they were really happy that Hawaii has started the program, because, when they returned, they didn't need to quarantine for 14 days. But, I had a conversation with my dad after they had gotten their test at one of the designated hospitals. You're basically free to do whatever you want to do for 2 days. And so, we went to Starbucks together, we went to the market together. And as we were doing this, I was telling him, I said, I don't see what the purpose of this 72-hour test is, because look, we're out and about doing whatever we want to do. And at any moment we could come into contact and you could get the virus. And when you go home, if you're not quarantining for 14 days, you could spread it to, my sister, their grandson, their and so it's just, it's kind of, right now I feel as though it's playing with fire. But and I think maybe they did it just to do it because um, people here in Korea are being discouraged. The government is just discouraging people to travel. So they say if you don't have a reason, and a really important reason that you're traveling, then you shouldn't be traveling overseas. Um, and so if they were to go to Hawaii, they have to, when they come back, they need to quarantine for 14 days. And so there's not going to be a lot of travel to Hawaii from Korea. So I don't know what the purpose of, opening up that program right now was, why it had to be now when there's a lot of cases, and then there's the mutations and the variants, and it's just, kind of makes you wonder.
Before we go on, I apologize. We didn't really properly introduce Minnie. We assume everybody on our watching know who you are, but Minnie is in South Korea right now. She's a consultant. She has her consulting firm up in South Korea, but she's from Hawaii. So someone said, "Wow, when she laughs, sounds like a local tita," because she is a local sister from Hawaii, and her family is still here in Honolulu, Mrs. Ko, and I guess Mr. Ko. But yeah, Minnie is her roots are here in Hawaii, and she resides in South Korea with her family. But yeah, she's a local girl, and very very akamai about what's happening in Hawaii. I know a lot of you are wondering how does she know so much about Hawaii? Well, because she's very connected. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Also,
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you. I don't know if you were on the show after you sent over all those masks. I can't remember if we
Yes.
were able to. She did come on after that.
No, but
Yeah.
we
So
didn't have
someone
opportunity.
reminded me right now, and thanking you for those masks. For those of you again that don't know, Minnie sent over a lot of masks uh, from South Korea with an Aloha logo that she had put on, and we were able to give that away to the public months and months and months ago at the Vidina Stadium. So, Minnie, thank you for that. I want to publicly thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
One thing that you were talking about, a couple of things. Number one is the asymptomatic positive. They're dangerous because, like you said, no one knows what that they have it and they could be spreading it. But you're saying that your country discourages travel. Our country does too, believe it or not. The CDC makes it very clear that right now, do not travel. And they also recommend a quarantine with a second test. So the federal government is recommending that. It's not a mandatory thing. But the local, like our state, is promoting. They're doing everything they can to make it convenient for the visitors to come in. Our airlines are marketing the state like it's there's no COVID. The government, our state government, is doing again everything they can to reduce restrictions while we have a wild variant out there that's floating around. I don't know if you answered whether or not South Korea has identified any variants yet, but I would assume that it's maybe not because no one's, not as many people maybe are going to South Korea, but at some point that variant's going to be everywhere. And this new variants are very, very dangerous. So have you
So,
folks any of those variants show up yet?
about beginning about a month ago, it started with 4 people that had come in from Great Britain. They came in and they tested for the variant. And within a month, they found, I want to say we're close to about 40. So about 40 people have tested positive for the variant, which is
Oh,
alarming because a few of those people were just in the community. It was through a community spread. And so now they're really looking closely at, you know, if this is spreading here in Korea. And it's a concern because it spreads a lot easier. And, there are more deaths that come from that variant. And so there is a lot of concern. And they are testing that to make sure that, it's not widely spreading throughout the country. What's interesting is they started to test animals and pets. And just recently, two pets actually have tested positive. And there is no evidence that animals can spread the virus to humans, but we can spread the virus to our pets. And so they are, trying to figure out what to do with these animals that are testing positive. And more they're starting to test the pets that, of positive cases. And what's happening is if your entire family tests positive and no one can take care of your pet, then they have a center where, they'll take care of the pet until you're free of COVID and you can come back home and be with your
Wow.
pet.
Wow. I have not heard that that one yet.
Well, we
As
heard the
far
one
as-
from San Diego, right? Remember the zoo, the
yeah,
gorilla,
the gorilla. They
Yeah.
did test the gorilla.
and tested
Not sure
positive.
what triggered the test. Maybe it was coughing. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. But the last time you were on, you explained to us the policy, the travel policy, the very strict travel policy for all incoming travelers or returning residents. Has that changed much at all?
No, that's still in place. What was surprising was when my parents came in and they were quarantining at my mother-in-law's house, and my mother-in-law came over to our house, so they had the house to themselves there. They told me that when they would watch TV on their screen, they would continue to see, a message in English that says, don't leave your house, and when you're under quarantine, things to do, things not to do. If you have symptoms, make sure you call this number. And so they're really engaged with the people that are coming into the country and, are being quarantined.
I find it very, very interesting. And again, Mel had said it earlier, just to let you folks know, Minnie was actually in local government here in Honolulu. So that's why she understands government and really the way they think, especially now during this pandemic. And, things can always change. But the thing that I find very, very interesting is the discipline that South Korea has, because when they ask for participation, it seems like you get nearly 100% participation. You might have a few, renegades that say that, but here everything is, you know, Constitution. You take away my rights. Anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. It just adds to the problem, and it's like we get to a point that we're really kicking the can down the road. We're not picking that can up and putting it in a recycling center. We're just kicking it down the road until the next person can come in, kick it down the road. And that, I think that's what frustrates a lot of us, because we can be, say, waiting, take our wives to the market, and when the men were, or vice versa, we're in a car and waiting, we see a whole group just walking around with no mask, and it just frustrates us because we want to go up and say something. Sometimes we do, and sometimes there's dismal results, and nobody wants to get into it. But yet, that's part of it, that we need that 100% buy-in for it to be effective, and especially in Hawaii. And you hit the nail on the head when you said transparency, because we've been getting reports now that's telling us that the system used to count the numbers have been like offline, so that larger numbers will be coming. But as long as you dilute the numbers, and it seems like the numbers are being so diluted that certain counties, like the city and county of Honolulu, can go to the next tier because they've been suffocated at this particular tier. So as long as those large numbers is reduced and just numbers are spread out, so it remains low, then basically everything's wide open again. So it's like a false pretense almost.
I think that it's there has to be a community effort and a group effort to get through this together. That's important. But what's also important is government enforcement as well. And I feel as though, you know, our local government there, they're not the rules and regulations and what they're suggesting is out there, but I feel as though the enforcement is weak. um, Here, what you see is, so right now we are on something called, up until a few days ago it was a 2.5 social distancing regulation that we were under, but now it's at level 2, and still at this level, you are not able to gather in groups of more than 5. Everything closes down at 9 p.m. If your family is a group of 6 or 8 people, you're not able to dine in a restaurant together. You're not even supposed to be at the restaurant together, even if you're on different tables. And they have this system here where you're able, and we have something similar in back at home in Hawaii, but here people in Korea, they actually take photos and they report people that aren't abiding by the regulations that are put out. And they will track them down and they'll fine you, and you will get a penalty or a fine, or if in worst case scenarios, something even bigger could happen. And it's enforced by the people and it's enforced by the authorities. And so it's really, people kind of just they want it to go away. They don't want COVID to be, and it's been over a year. It's done a lot to our economy back at home in Hawaii, but here as well in Korea, there's a lot of different problems that arise as well. Like, there's more domestic abuse, there's a lot of mental health issues that are going on. And so, everyone just wants it to go away and end, but it's not going to be done magically. You really, the effort needs to be put in.
What's interesting is the different cultures. See, in South Korea, people want to get it over with. They want it to be gone. And they're doing what they need to do to make that happen, and the government included. The government is really the stick, right? We will get through this, but we gotta sacrifice. In our country, it's a little different. I think in our country, a lot of our decision makers, rather than think long term, they're looking short term, and they think that because we have mental health issues here as well, we have a lot of people struggling. But to many people, the solution is open it up, restore tourism, and everything's going to be okay. But that's a whole different strategy than what South Korea is doing. The South Korea, you've seen some very powerful surges that have killed a lot of people, and so have we. Maybe not here in Hawaii, to the extent that we've seen in other states, but the fact remains that this virus is still running around, and we're looking at the economic health. When I say we, I'm talking about our leadership, and they believe restoring tourism is the solution, and that's where I think a lot of people have opposing views, because this virus can cause some major issues, especially with the variants running around.
At some point, we do need to restore tourism, and we need to go back to a normal daily life. But maybe that it should be after more people have been vaccinated. Right now, what I was a little concerned to read was that they're pushing to open up tourism, yet they haven't vaccinated the people that are working in the travel industry, the people that are working in the hotels. And so if you're not going to protect them first, I feel as though they need to be vaccinated first before we open up. People of Hawaii need to be vaccinated.
How's the vaccination program going in South Korea? And not sure if you heard, but the lieutenant governor is proposing that once he's trying to get the governor to approve restrictionless travel if you get your second vaccine, if you get the second shot, 14 days after your second shot, you're free to come to Hawaii without a test, without a quarantine. Not sure. I mean, it doesn't sound like Korea is even thinking about anything like that. But it just does. You still have the 14-day quarantine. But how's vaccinations over there? You guys, the supply is adequate? Are you guys getting those shots out?
No, so they haven't started vaccines here in Korea yet. They have acquired about 23 million vaccines to distribute, but that hasn't begun yet. They're hoping to begin in early March and take it out throughout the summer. What they are reminding people though about the vaccination is because you have your 2 doses of, because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that you're not able to spread the virus or catch the virus. And so it's kind of like our flu vaccines. When we get our flu vaccine, I've gotten my flu vaccine every year, but there are still years where I get the flu. And it's just, the symptoms and, the flu that you get, the symptoms that you have are a lot weaker than, should you have not gotten the vaccine. And, they're reminding people that it's the same thing for COVID. And, another big reminder is that adults are receiving the vaccines, yet children aren't able to receive the vaccine. So, if you're vaccinated, you can still catch the virus and be infected. And if you're infected, you may not have symptoms, but you could still spread the virus to, children that are under 16 that haven't been vaccinated.
Wow.
Let me ask you, as far as your one of the viewers asked about South Korea's unemployment system. See, I think here, and from your time at in Honolulu government, that there's a lot of companies that put into the system, the employees put into the system. So in case of that unfortunate circumstance, there's that backup. Many here in Hawaii, and you might have read about it, because the system is so outdated, they haven't even received one check since the start of this pandemic, which is baffling. And so that has become the divide: unemployment and bringing and getting back to work. So when you got a lot of this I call it the human machinery and the way we think start going on, what possibly could happen is the science of keeping one safe kind of like falls at the wayside, because now they're looking at the real gist of things. How do I make ends meet? How do I do this? How is South Korea handling it for those who cannot work because of this virus? The unemployment system, is it up and running?
There is no problem with the unemployment system, but there has been a lot of problems with it's just small businesses, people that have small restaurants. They've needed to close down. They just can't survive. So the same issues that other places have, and other cities, other countries have, those they do still have those same issues here. And because the enforcement is so great here, it's they're not they're it makes it even harder for these small businesses to survive. But there are different programs in place that they can get benefits from and take advantage of. Um, However, there is, you know, our unemployment system back at home is just, unheard of. That is, it's just, um, I hear stories and I read up on it, and it's just absolutely absurd. It's, people are not able to put food on the table. They're not able to make ends meet. And, the unemployment office isn't even picking up their phone. You call them and it'll ring and say, oh, we have too many calls at this time, and then just click. There is no, and you're not able to go down and see someone. You're not able to call in. They don't answer emails. It is just a I have
It-
no words for
yeah, I do, but
unemployment.
No,
it's not
it's true.
appropriate. I have
Yeah.
words, but it's not appropriate for this show. But so let's say I'm an employee of a restaurant, small restaurant, and the restaurant closes down in South Korea, and I'm unemployed now. What do I do in South Korea? What happens to me in South Korea?
So you can, if you are a full-time employee, your unemployment kicks in and you are able to get your unemployment payments. But also what they have is a center here where you're able to go and get a job for that day. And what they've realized, and it was just on the news here a few days ago, is that more and more people are coming into this center. And what happens is you go in early in the morning, and there are companies that need people to work for just that day, and they pick up a job for the day, and then they get paid for that day. And so, there's those type of programs as well. But, there has, I have never heard, a single case of someone that has put into the system and not been able to get their unemployment check.
It's theft. It's called theft. In the Hawaii revised statutes, it's called theft. Can you imagine going to the bank and say, "Hey, I need to withdraw $500. I'm sorry, our system is so old, we can't access your money right now." Can you imagine what would happen? And there's nothing different. You smash your car, you call your insurance company, "Hey, I got into a car accident. Can I get my car fixed?" Well, gosh, you're not gonna believe this, but our computer system is broken and it's gonna be 18 months. No, no, that's called fraud because you paid into it.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's been over a year now, and them not being able to do anything about it for a year, that's more than just something is wrong. The system is old. It's something is wrong with the people. It's the leadership, and um, it's just you're doing an injustice. It's just not right.
I think a lot of it too. Well, first, the unemployment system. I think if it was on mark like South Korea, then there wouldn't be that much pushback about trying to work out safety programs for travelers, because at least people would still have money to put the food on the table, have money to yeah, at least pay their rent, and do things like that. But when you don't have it, you grasp at the first thing that comes about, and that is, well, I know how to make money, but I got to work, and I'm in a field that relies on travelers coming to Hawaii. So that's that. The second thing I think that gets caught up in the minds of government, and I don't know what it is a few think that they know, and we talked about it last night. I said, we're talking about things that are affecting people. Why aren't people that are affected brought to the table as stakeholders and let you know what the experience is? So maybe when you folks decide to develop a bill and discuss at the legislative level, you'll be talking with at least not with a concocted idea, but with an idea that, hey, we talk to the constituents who happens to be the ones affected the most. You would have more of that, I think, that buy-in at that point. But I don't think it's happened. I mean, some have done census, which is good. They kind of get a feel of what's the tempo out in their community that they represent. But I don't think it's done across the board. I don't think it's done across the board. So that's been the biggest dark point. And I have to say, I thank you so much for keeping up with Hawaii news all the way in South Korea, as bad as it may be. But at least you can see what's definitely happening. And a lot of things you say does make sense, and it's worth for the people that's joining us for the first time and hearing you talk about South Korea, is to get a better understanding why you can deal with this, even though measures are a little tough on us, but you're trying to get rid of it as fast as you can. It almost seems as if we're just trying to stall this thing and just stretch it out. And I don't know.
It's there's a lot of moving parts, and I think you would think that in a year all of the moving parts would be fine tuned, and I think that's the frustration for a lot of the people here in Hawaii anyway, because uh, you know you watch the news here and you hear just the fact that they're discussing $350 million for a new stadium, all of these projects that I mean, why are we? To me, it's insulting to that family who hasn't had an unemployment check for months and months and months that we can even discuss a new stadium right now. Seriously, I love football, I really do, but I imagine for those families at home that are struggling, and you hear our leaders talk about that like we need a stadium right now, and yet your unemployment system cannot even pay your claimants. That's the insulting. That's the part that hurts. That's the part that gets people upset, and they know that it's a lost cause. So the next step is, okay, what next? And that's where you start to compromise on health and safety, and that is where I'm concerned. That's where I'm concerned.
Now, Minnie, does South Korea, you have your problems with homelessness, right? In South Korea. What does the government do? Because today we just saw something where, unfortunately, like shelter in place, right? Because you don't want the homeless to actually get infected. And but sooner or later they're gonna have to ask them to leave those parks that's run by government. What does South Korea do? How do they help the homelessness situation?
It's so Bill has been to Korea before, and he can attest to this. Is that you really don't see they're there, but you don't see them.
Mm,
They're not just like how we have back at home. And they you, when you do see them is in the evenings or in early mornings where they're sleeping at the subway stations, or they're sleeping under the stairway by the subway stations. But by the time people are out and they're ready to go to work, everyone is gone. Nobody, you don't see them just lying there. And there are shelters here, there are programs here. There are it's everything here is in place. And I feel as though a lot of the homeless people here, they do take advantage of that. And at the same time, it's they don't want to be an inconvenience to
mm.
regular people. And so when people are out and they are commuting, they're going to work, that's when they leave. And you really they're not there, you don't see them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, again, it's just a different culture. I think the level of pride in South Korea, in many Asian countries, they just they don't want to inconvenience. That's, remember Hawaii years ago or decades ago, that aloha spirit, right? You didn't want to inconvenience anybody. You didn't want to make anyone feel bad. That was the aloha spirit. And as time goes on, there's obviously less of that. But I think, just generally speaking, the culture of the Asian culture is so much more different. And I think that I don't think anybody's free from homelessness, but honestly, and all the times, of course, I didn't get to the towns too much. I was always in a field, but the times that I did get into, like our last trip there, we got to go to Incheon, and it's very, very different. It's very clean. It's very, you don't see that. You don't see that at all. And, so, yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen here in Kauai now. They're moving or closing down some of the homeless compounds, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to those people. It's just
You
sad.
know, what's nice here is that they have a lot of COVID quarantine facilities here. And so there are the hospitals, you have the ICU beds, you have, so the people that test positive and need more medical attention, they're taken to the hospitals. If you test positive and you have zero symptoms, or you have very weak symptoms, then you're put into a quarantine facility. But like I had mentioned before, nobody is left in their homes, or kind of you fight it off on your own. Everyone is taken either to a hospital or to a quarantine facility. And it goes for the homeless as well. If they test positive, then they're taken to a quarantine facility, where they're in their own individual rooms. And there's a doctor that makes the rounds to make sure that someone isn't developing symptoms or getting worse. And if it does get worse, then they're removed and they're taken to a hospital. So it's really nice to be able to have that here, where that if there is a person that tests positive, they're not going to be left at home to fight it off on their own, or even possibly just be able to go run about on their own. What was shocking for me was, this was a person that I'm acquainted with, is that in Hawaii, because after you test positive, there's no follow up on um, what happens to you. Is that once you feel as though you're okay, you can leave your house. But here, you can't go anywhere until you have that second negative. They don't test you once, they test you twice. And so if you're positive, they make sure that within, I think it was within a 24, 48-hour period, that you return two negative tests. And just to make sure that it's not a false test, so before they put you back out there, they want to make sure that that virus is out of your body.
What a concept. Yeah. What a concept. And we don't here. You get a little paper that tells you after so many days without symptoms, you just go. You're on your way. Incredible. Right back to the workforce, right back to whatever. Incredible. One of the things that sets South Korea apart, I think, from America for sure, is the quarantine facilities. The fact that the government provides facilities for these patients to go to, so there is no chance for that virus to spread once they're identified. And I could never understand why, when we had early on, we had the high numbers, everybody was shut down, all the hotels were shut down. There were opportunities. I know Honolulu took advantage of a couple of hotels that they basically they bought the hotels out and used that as a facility for people that tested positive. But for the life of me, I can't figure out why we didn't come up with a plan as part of the COVID response plan that we would take over. We would buy the hotel. You could utilize a lot of our hotels on all the islands as a quarantine facility. And we never did that. We never did that. And so we you test positive, you go home. And and I think that was a lot of the problems. When you'll see when the reports come out, it says, oh, we had 3 cases yesterday, uh, one travel related, two community spread or from the same household, because they're going back and infecting other people in their home. So I don't get it. We just don't learn from other countries that do it right, like South Korea. But that could have been a win-win, because you would have provided revenue to the hotels.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming that South Korea makes sure that whoever is managing that hotel, the people that are operating the hotel are safe and are protected. It's been a year and we haven't figured it out here yet. That's frustrating.
Well, let me ask you, Minnie, overall, it seems that when numbers rise, the the people of South Korea, they're confident that, well, you said that this time the contact tracing has been a little overwhelmed, right? With what's happening now. But for the most part, it almost has this sense that the people are confident that it will get suffocated. We've done it before, we'll do it again, right? So the people, have they abandoned? See, that's the thing that I worry about. If people say, if they don't have enough confidence that government will get a hold of this virus, then I think that's when everything can go sideways. That's what my worry is.
That confidence is always there. Even just if speaking for myself, um, when my parents are here, I would, share with them when the numbers go down. I would share with them, it's okay for us to go out because, they have a control on it, and it's because you know exactly where the viruses and who they're testing and how many people are positive, and you know it down to the actual district. You feel really safe. And there are businesses, most of them that do business at night. They're no longer able to do the business because everything is closing at 9. Beginning a couple of days ago, now it's closing at 10, but they have that 10 o'clock curfew. Yet, if you want to go out for lunch, we feel pretty much safe to go out for lunch. Everyone, not not only do you have confidence in the government, you have confidence in, the people, your counterparts as well. And so, you're pretty confident that whoever you come into contact with has been doing the necessary things that they need to do to make sure that, they're not infected.
Mm.
But businesses, local businesses here in Incheon, you go in at lunch and there's still a lot of people in there. They're thriving. They're going out eating lunch. I took my parents to one of the traditional markets, and it was just crazy. There were so many people there, uh, yet it hasn't gotten totally out of control.
Mm.
And when the numbers do spike up, I feel as the people are, they're confident that the people will do what they need to do and the government will do what they need to do to make sure the numbers come back down.
Okay.
You probably don't have a problem with people wearing masks. Do you folks have a mask mandate in South Korea, or is
It
it
is,
just?
yeah. So there is a mask mandate, and if you're not wearing a mask, you're not allowed to enter a building or get on any type of public transportation. And if you're not wearing a mask, someone is going to take a picture and report you, or but you don't have that problem here.
Yeah, I mean, the Asian countries, they wore masks way before COVID. They always wear masks. You
Yeah,
folks
and I
still,
think it's a part of the culture as well, right? Because here, when they're sick before COVID, if you're sick, you have a cold, you'll wear a mask just so that you're not infecting other people as well.
No, not Hawaii. It's protocol to sneeze in somebody else's face. I mean,
I know we're running out of time, Minnie, but you folks still have the COVID app. The app, is that still running as it was the last time you were on?
Yeah, that's still there. When my parents came in, they had to register through the app, and the app pinpoints where they are. They check in on the app every day. You have one of the authorities, government local authorities, calling you to make sure you're doing what you need to do. You need to report your temperature 2 times a day. And if you don't answer your phone and they call back and you don't answer again, then they actually come over to wherever you're quarantining. They start knocking on your door to make sure that you're there. So, that's still all in place. And with the mutations and variant, I think that, they are, it's, they're starting to tighten up again and, make sure that that doesn't spread.
So, what would your government leaders say um, if it was proposed to them that you would open up travel to anyone as long as they had their second shot 14 days after, that you could fly into South Korea without a test, without a quarantine, just come on in? What would your leadership say?
So the subject has been brought up because the whole theory behind the travel bubbles and, testing people before they come in. And each time South Korea will decline the offer only because they have seen directly the amount of people that are testing positive during that 14-day quarantine, even though they have tested negative in the beginning. And so, even now, since January, people that have tested before they came, before that they get on the flight, they come to Korea, and during that 14-day period, they either develop symptoms or if they're asymptomatic, before the 14 days are up, they test positive. And so, every day you see about 30 to 40 people that are coming into Korea, that, that's right now, I want to say there's maybe about 1,500 foreigners, international people coming into Korea a day. And you see maybe about 40 people, 30 to 40 people testing positive.
Wow.
You know what?
And that's people that have tested prior to coming.
Negative, right.
You know what frustrates me the most though? Here you have a culture, but they're no different. They're no different from us here in Hawaii that has a sound systematic plan in place, and they haven't wavered from it because they've been through the waves of this virus. And yet we in Hawaii, we're just rolling the dice and say, hey, we'll settle for any number that pops up. And like I said last night, okay, so we open up and say the numbers don't change because people aren't traveling. Then what are we gonna do? So I said, it's just, I don't know if we're hedging our bets on the wrong approach. I mean, I'm not the expert, but yet I guess it's just from the police background that I just err on the side of caution no matter what. I mean, even my grandkids, my son used to always tell me, Dad, they're kids, they're going to fall. I says, well, under my watch, I don't care. I'm not going to let them fall. But, sometimes you got to let them get one small owie and then you get over it. And they call that, being able to cut the apron strings to let them go. I don't know if I can ever change. I mean, I wish I could, but I don't think I can change. Safety first over everything. That's the way I feel.
I agree. I think that, the health and safety of the people are the most important. And, there, I feel as though we will get over this and, we will get it under control. And, at a time after people are vaccinated, the travel will start to pick up. And I understand that it's difficult for many people out there, but, it could become far more difficult. And you to lose people that you love, that are around you, and to see them suffer and die. And so I yeah, it is hard. um and I understand why people are anxious, and I understand why the leaders back at home are anxious. But in the long run, to like Mel said, when you look at the bigger picture, you have to see um, what's going to benefit the people in the long run.
Mhm.
Well, what's really, really frightening me is, and this thing has consumed me as well as Charlie. It really has. And you know, we do as much research as we can. What scares me right now, Minnie, and when you're talking about the variants that just arrived in Korea, South Korea, what's really frightening is what the experts are saying. The epidemiological experts, the scientific experts that are predicting that this variance will create a fourth wave that's going to be worse than the first, the second, and the third. These people have no reason to make this up. I look at that, and I think I'm with Charlie on this, that we err on the side of safety. I know Charlie talked about, same with my kids, I'll never cut that umbilical cord. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure they don't get hurt. But I can understand people saying, hey, let them go, they got to fall. The difference is this: when the kid fall, he goes to his knees, no one else gets hurt. No one else gets hurt. He gets hurt, and Papa get hurt, the saw inside the heart. But with COVID, no, because that person is going to hurt others. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just the way this virus operates. But that is what's frightening me, Minnie. Experts that have followed this thing way before we did. These guys are smart. They know what they're talking about, and their predictions scare me. And if that surge should hit Hawaii, we'll be in big trouble. So that's I guess that's the risk you take, and I think our leadership here is willing to take that risk, and I hope they're right. I really do. I really do. But I know you're well connected. Your mom is an angel, well connected woman. So I know that you guys are concerned as well. So anyway, man, we blew through that hour way too quick, Minnie. Darn. You want to say anything to our viewers? You got a lot of fans on here. I got to tell you, I'm watching you. No, you do. I'm telling you, you got a lot of fans. When's your next book coming out, or your movie? When's your next movie coming out?
You know, I mean, I could say anything. It's just that, you know, yeah, it is hard and it's tough and it's frightening, and but you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and if we work together as a community and we not only worry about ourselves, but you know, also the people around us, then you know, I do think that we can get through this together. And you know, when I remember our first conversation together, I had stressed how important masks were, and I feel as though it took close to a year for the CDC to realize that, you know, the importance of masks, and you know, the reason why countries have mask mandates, and uh, you need proper masks, not just a scarf or a bandana or you know, a cloth mask. It's not going to help. You need, you know, if you're going to wear a cloth mask, then make sure that you have a filter inside, or some sort of filter is built into that cloth mask. But you know, masks are really important. And you know, yeah, you know, I want to be with my family, and you know, I want to go. And my brother just had his son. He had a son, and I haven't been able to see him yet. And so, you know, it's, I want to go too, but it's just, I feel like we just need to wait just a little bit longer. And if we all work together, you know, I really do believe that we can get through this.
Yep.
Well stated. All the way from South Korea, which it's what, Thursday over there right now, right?
It is Thursday, yes.
Charles.
Well, again, I'd like to say thank you so much, Minnie, for joining us tonight. It's always enlightening talking to you. Taking your words about the light at the end of the tunnel. I learned long ago that I once walked into a tunnel with a flashlight and I saw that light, only to realize I was walking towards a mirror. So if you understand that. But you know, to our viewers, we are so fortunate when we have someone from Hawaii but lives elsewhere. It's always good to kind of it's like testing the waters, but getting a tempo of what's happening abroad. And it's always good to see what other governments are doing, because you know, it's very easy to tap into what the negatives are. But then tonight you heard a whole hour of the positive of what South Korea is doing, because they too have their set of problems with the variants and community spread, but they're making all the hard decisions, and the community is buying into it, and I think that's why they'll be successful, and I believe we can be successful too. So again, Minnie, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Mel.
Thank you, Minnie. Appreciate you so much. We got to do this more often, actually. We really do. I think my takeaway tonight is I love our country. I really do, and I love Korea as well. But I think what you said in your closing comments were so important, is that we will get through this if we all work together, if we all focus and concentrate on working together. I think that's kind of been the message.
Mhm.
And aloha spirit. I don't know what they call them in South Korea, but I don't know if they have an aloha spirit, but they should. They have that kind of courtesy for others, and I think that's what we're lacking. We have so many people over here that, and I see a lot of the comments about tourists, tourists, tourists. Listen, people, it's not just the tourists. It's our residents that refuse to wear a mask. It's our residents that refuse to stay away from huge gatherings. So, let's not blame the tourists. It's us. We got to start with ourselves before we can start getting to that light at the end of the tunnel. So, thank you, Minnie. I appreciate. Um, Send our aloha and our love to your family, and to Mrs. Ko. I should get her on the show one night. She would be hilarious, man. She'd be fun.
Hey, Mel,
Hey,
it would be very, I think, enlightening. You just mentioned about our local people not wearing masks. I think if the Department of Health would just say that when a reported infection occurs, whether it be from a gathering water, that they just say the person's name that they attended a gathering.
put
You
them in a
start doing things
paper.
like that, I tell you, people are going to just say, no gatherings. Because why?
Yeah,
Like be on the front page of the news. You know what I mean? Me.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I hate to go down that road, but nothing else is working. And the reason is because the messaging from the state is that we're doing well. We're all good. And I think that's where we're going to run into trouble. But anyway, thank you, Minnie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mel. Thank you, Charlie. I'll
We'll
see
see
you
you guys
again.
soon. We will see you guys soon. And tomorrow night, everybody, 7 o'clock, same place, same time. And don't forget Friday, Feel Good Friday. We got some good businesses lined up for you guys. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. God bless. We love you guys. And always remember, aloha.